Mr. President.
Senator from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. President, I come to the floor once again today to seek unanimous consent for the passage of the Anderl Judicial Security and Privacy Act of 2021. Mr. President, I say once again because a little over a month ago I came to the floor seeking unanimous consent for the same exact bill, which was reported out of the Senate Judiciary Committee last December with overwhelming bipartisan support, and whose namesake is Daniel Anderl, the 20-year-old son of U.S. District Court Judge Esther Salas. Judge Salas is in the gallery today, hoping we can come together as a body to deliver real solutions to honor her family by ensuring that no federal judge or their family experience the same violence that she and her family faced. 1 year, 10 months, and 27 days ago, her son Daniel was brutally murdered by a gunman who targeted Judge Salas for her gender, her ethnicity, and because he could not accept her judgment in a case that reached her court. Every single day since July 19th of 2020, Judge Salas and her husband Mark have endured the immense grief of burying their only son. Mr. President, no parent should have to experience such a devastating loss. Yet in the face of so much pain, Judge Salas has channeled it into purpose, embarking on a personal mission to increase the safety and privacy of her fellow judges and their families. The murderer was able to carry out this horrific hate crime using publicly available information, tracking down Judge Salas to her home in New Jersey, gravely injuring her husband, and murdering Daniel in cold blood when he answered the door. As I said the last time I came to the floor seeking unanimous consent, no parent should have to experience such a devastating loss. But in the months since then and now, our country has seen the tragic results of inaction. On June 4th, a retired county judge in Wisconsin was shot and killed in his home by a gunman who appeared before his court. And just 4 days later, a man was arrested near Justice Kavanaugh's home in Maryland after being found with a gun, a knife, and a plan to kill the Supreme Court justice. Reports suggest the perpetrator found Justice Kavanaugh's address online. We cannot take these events as isolated incidents. The brutal murder of Judge Salas's son, the horrific killing of a retired county judge in Wisconsin, the attempt on Justice Kavanaugh's life demand that Congress act to protect those who sit in the judiciary. Simply put, we must prevent any other judge from having to endure the threats and senseless violence that these families have experienced. After the horrific tragedy Judge Salas and Mark suffered, Senator Booker and I made personal commitments to honor Daniel's legacy through action. We told her we would not rest until we enacted greater protections for those who serve on the bench, to protect any other judge from having to endure the senseless violence Judge Salas experienced. And it's important to protect this branch of our government because we want them to render decisions that are free from fear. Free from fear. That they will render impartial justice free from fear of what may happen to them as a result of their judgment. We can make progress on that work today in this chamber. The bipartisan bill I seek unanimous consent for is an effort I'm proud to lead with 12 of my colleagues, including Senators Booker, Durbin, Graham, Kennedy, Cruz, and Grassley. Our bill would protect the personally identifiable information that assailants have used to target judges and their families. It's a common sense measure that would authorize the U.S. Marshal Service to monitor online threats and deter future attacks. It's so common sense that it was voted out of the Judiciary Committee with a strong bipartisan support. I'm talking about a 21-0 vote in the affirmative. It's so common sense that it should build on the work the Senate just did a month ago when it fast-tracked important safeguards for Supreme Court justices and their families. I'll say it again. Nearly a month ago, the Senate acted here in mere minutes to increase protections for Supreme Court justices, protections that were proven to be necessary when police apprehended Judge Kavanaugh's would-be assailant. Yesterday, our colleagues in the House of Representatives voted to pass that bill Today, we should take steps to protect all federal judges. There's simply no explanation or justification to protect Supreme Court justices while delaying legislation to protect judges at every level of judiciary who face the same, if not greater, risks. No judge in America should have to fear for their lives and the safety of their family as they work to uphold the Constitution, our democracy, and ensure all people have equal justice under the law. We've seen the consequences of inaction over the previous month, but we have an opportunity to act in this moment and advance our bipartisan bill, the Anderl Judicial Security and Privacy Act, which has continued to garner support. This isn't a partisan issue. This bill is not about right or left. It's about right and wrong. Once again, I ask my Senate colleagues to let us honor the life and memory of Daniel Anderl with decisive action and resolve. Let's do the right thing to honor Daniel's legacy and unanimously pass this legislation named after him. So, Mr. President, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of calendar number 190 S2340. Further, that the committee reported substitute amendment be withdrawn, the Menendez substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
The senator from Kentucky is recognized.
reserving the right to object. For a year and a half, we've been offering my colleague a compromise and to pass this bill. We could pass this bill today immediately. All we've been asking is that it not only protect federal judges, but protect members of Congress as well. I haven't heard a cogent or even any argument for why it couldn't. It's a very simple compromise. To pass things unanimous takes compromise, takes people coming together and people agreeing. But there hasn't been any movement, there hasn't been any compromise, and I'm still open. We could pass this today if you include members of Congress. If recent years have taught us anything, it is that members of the legislative branch need protection as well as the judiciary. That was clear in 2011 when Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was tragically shot while she was doing the most important part of her job, meeting with constituents. Words cannot express how happy and inspired I was to see that Congresswoman Giffords was in the chamber with her husband, Senator Kelly, when he was sworn in as a member of this body. But words also cannot express the pain felt by the families of the people who were killed that day and wounded. That should have been a wake-up call to protect members of Congress and in doing so better protect the people around them. But just a few years later, a shooter nearly killed Congressman Steve Scalise during the practice for the charity baseball game. I was there. A young man was shot 10 feet from me. I said at the time that our lives were saved by the Capitol Hill Police. Had they not been there, things could have been much worse. Extending the provisions of this bill to members of Congress would better protect us and our families and our constituents. I've been offering this for 2 years. My amendment, which I will offer for unanimous consent, simply extends the same protections it would offer to the judicial branch to the legislative branch. This is not a new request. In December 2020, when we discussed this bill on the floor, I offered this compromise. I said I would work together with the other side to try to get a bill that we could pass. But we haven't gotten anywhere. If we want this to pass, let's compromise. Let's come together and figure out a way that we can get this to pass. I know of no argument or no constituency that is coming to Washington saying, we don't want members of Congress to be protected. There is no such constituency. There is no such argument, and there's no reason why we couldn't pass this today. It's been almost 2 years. Let's pass this bill today. As I've said over and over again, I support this bill and the provisions, and I don't believe it ought to be blocked merely because members of Congress also need protection. With that being said, I ask unanimous consent that the senator modify his request to include my amendment to the Menendez substitute amendment, which is at the desk, that the amendments be considered and agreed to, the bill as amended be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Reserving the right to...
Is there objection to the modification?
Mr. President.
Senator from New Jersey is recognized.
Reserving the right to object. I think the points that the senator from Kentucky is making, Mr. President, are worthy. We are facing a reality right now where there are lots of threats that are increasing against public officials all around our country, and I understand that. This is not a bill that Senator Menendez and I just wrote and brought to the floor. This is a bill that we worked through the committee process. It was a long and arduous process that was done in a bipartisan manner. And during the discussion that the committee had, the point that the senator from Kentucky brought up was brought up as well. There is a real concern about the safety and security of members of this body. But with the understanding and the commitment that there would be a bipartisan effort to work on this issue, every senator in the Judiciary Committee said we should let this go right now. This bill has been vetted, worked over in a bipartisan manner, is ready to pass. Threats on the federal judiciary have gone up 500%. And I'll grant you, threats on members of Congress have doubled. But the threats on the federal judiciary are rising, and we saw that in the case of Judge Kavanaugh. And this body thought it enough not to hold up the protection of Supreme Court justices to protect the 535 of us. We passed a bill to protect Supreme Court justices. And so here we now have a bill that has been vetted through committee, has been worked on in a bipartisan fashion, and came out. And we have a commitment for the senator from Kentucky to say that nothing has been done is not right. We now have Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Amy Klobuchar working a bill through committee, through regular order, to make sure that we address the concerns that he's having. But this is my concern. Threats on the judiciary have gone up significantly higher than this body. And to grind this bill to a halt right now puts at risk members of the judiciary when we have the power in this body to protect our brothers and sisters in that branch of government. Why would we stop when there is goodwill in the Judiciary Committee to work on the concerns? There are two people committed to this bill and verbal commitments from everyone. So to stop this today creates a window of vulnerability that we know is real because we just saw a threat on a Supreme Court justice. And so for the sake of mercy, for the sake of caution, for the sake of the protection of people in the federal judiciary, let's pass this bill, and I commit myself to joining with Senator Ted Cruz, to joining with Senator Amy Klobuchar, to joining with Chairman Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley, who've also spoken to their willingness to work a bill through regular order. That's what we should be doing. Our job as senators, if anything, first and foremost, is to protect the lives of American citizens. We have a bill that is widely bipartisan, that is proven to be urgent, a bill with the name of a young man that was slaughtered in his home. To hold this bill up is cruel. It is creating risk and jeopardy to people who serve in the judiciary. It is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. I ask my colleague with all humility and with all compassion and empathy to please let this go. I commit to him that I will fight and work with the bipartisan coalition that is working on ways to protect people in this body. I yield.
Is there objection to the modification?
Reserving the right to object for all the reasons that Senator Booker just mentioned, and with an equal commitment to Senator Paul to work with Senator Klobuchar, Senator Cruz, who are working on a bill to protect members. We'll look to advocate for the senator's language to be included in that legislation. The senator could have done this on the Supreme Court judges, but he didn't. At this point, I'll have to object.
Is there objection to the original request?
Reserving the right to object.
The senator from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. We've been trying for a year and a half. Our staff has offered to meet with the opposition staff. We've not had one meeting. They have not accepted a meeting, much less a compromise. A year and a half. This could pass today with simply accepting this. A promise to do it at a later date when we've waited a year and a half. A year and a half went by because no one would meet with us. We've not had one meeting. We have offered to meet with the staffs of both of the authors of this, and we have not been granted a meeting. There's been no discussion of this between staff, no discussion of a compromise. We would take a compromise. I don't understand. There has been no argument made today why Congress couldn't be added to this bill. They could have added this bill or talked to us over the year and a half. No one's talked to us other than to come for the public theater. No one has tried to get this thing passed. I object.
Mr. President.
The objection is heard.
I know the hour is late.
The senior senator from New Jersey is
I am
recognized.
unaware of any such request, and I'm unaware of us not being willing. Of course we're willing. As a matter of fact, Judge Salas is here and tried to see you, Senator Paul, to make her case. You wouldn't give her the time of day.
I know that, again, the hour is late. May I be recognized?
Senator from New Jersey is recognized.
I feel the same way. I literally turned to my staff. Has Senator Paul's staff reached out to us at all? That's not the case. And to characterize us as the opposition, we're not in opposition to his bill. We're trying to protect federal judges, as is the unanimous vote of the Judiciary Committee. And so this is very frustrating that we didn't stop the Supreme Court judges. He had no objection to that. But for some reason, other members of the judiciary, I just find that problematic. I'm willing to meet with him. I'm not in opposition to his bill. The meeting that should be had, I will do it, but with the two sponsors of a bill to protect the United States Senate. But to hold up the protection of other fellow citizens because we're not getting protection, to me, does not mark the nobility of this body and the self-sacrifice of this body. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The majority leader's